Good American Family is hot garbage. It's pure sensationalized trash made for an edge of the seat viewing experience meant to entertain, not inform. And normally that's not a bad thing if we're talking about purely fictional stories, but when you're portraying the real life case of people that are very much still alive and able to watch your show, you should really do better. For those of you who don't know anything about this, Good American Family tells the story of Natalia Grace, a girl who was born in Ukraine in 2003, was adopted in 2010 by an American couple, Michael and Christine Barnett, and subsequently abused, brainwashed, and abandoned in 2012 as a minor after they legally changed her year of birth from 2003 to 1989. They made her 14 years older so they could dump her in the middle of nowhere and move to Canada. I've already made a video about the documentary The Curious Case of Natalia Grace. If you want to check that out, I'll leave the link in the description box down below and also on the screen somewhere here. But going into Good American Family, my fear was that they were going to do exactly what the documentary did, which is lead with the story of this is a crazy woman who posed as a child to terrorize a good American couple, only to then slowly, frustratingly slowly, reveal that actually she was a child and the parents were the abusive ones the entire time. And the kicker is that in the end, they get away with everything. And unsurprisingly, the series does exactly what the documentary did. They dedicate the first half of the series, 4 out of 8 episodes, to telling the story purely from the perspective of Michael and Christine's allegations. The ones that claim that Natalia Grace was an adult woman, a con artist, who infiltrated their family just so she could scam them out of their money and potentially steal the husband and also kill the sons, the 3 sons that they have. And then in episode 5, halfway through, just like the documentary in season 1, they do a 180 plot twist thing where they reveal that actually Natalia was a kid all along. And in the words of Ellen Pompeo, the actress that plays Christine, she says, "We're coming up with our own version of what this story could have been, so this isn't sort of a beat for beat of what their experience was. It's really what we do here, I guess, in Hollywood. We make entertainment that hopefully provokes thought, and we take a set of circumstances and put our spin on it." Spoken like a true idiot. I despise this statement because we're not talking about a fictional story, right? We're talking about real people, real life cases, a real life case that happened not so long ago. But in an attempt to make this more dramatic and more entertaining, Hollywood does a complete disservice to Natalia. So I highly encourage anyone and everyone interested to know more about this to not watch the series, completely avoid it, and instead go on YouTube. There's plenty of interviews of Natalia Grace telling her own story. Hell, watch the documentary because at some point they do bring her in and they do get her inside her input directly. But don't go streaming the series on Hulu because the more we watch it, the more we're telling Hollywood that we're okay with this, that we're okay with them sensationalizing people's lives for clicks, for money, for entertainment. And that's wrong. You'd think that after all these years, they would have the guts to tell the real story from the beginning, to open with, hey, Christine is a evil, sociopathic. Her husband is a dickless, coward little weasel, and together they committed one of the biggest atrocities against a disabled, defenseless little girl, and got away with it. They would have lost the element of intrigue, the element of mystery, but in return, they would have done her story justice. Because what this series does and what the documentary does is it perpetuates this narrative of it's impossible for us to know what really happened. In fact, each episode starts with a legal disclaimer, which you can pause to read if you want, but the first 4 episodes follow the allegations of Michael and Christine. Then episodes 5 and 6 follow the allegations of Natalia. And then 7 and 8, they do a little mixture of both. And it concludes at the end of Michael's trial where he was declared not guilty in one of the biggest miscarriages of justice, which we'll get into in a second. But we're also going to give an update on Natalia and where she's at right now. Following from my previous video, we didn't get to the second and third season of the documentary because there was a lot to talk about, but I will give an update at the end, so, follow the timestamps if you want to skip to that. But yeah, let's get into the series because there's a lot that I want to talk about. But mainly the point that I want to get across is that this is so infuriating and frustrating. I wish that someone at Hulu would have gained common sense and realized we're still doing the same that these parents did. Because even if at the end they try to redeem the story somehow and finally tell what actually happened, the facts, it still doesn't erase 4 full episodes of having this girl act like an evil person. And this is one for you to really get a drink and a snack and sit back. I got a drink myself, and I never do this, but yeah, let's get into it, guys. Also, if you're new here, hi, welcome. I'm Eric. We talk about some cool shit and some not so cool shit, as is the case today. Consider subscribing, liking the video. And if you're not new here, hey, welcome back. Thank you for coming back, and thank you for the support. I really appreciate it. Now, Good American Family, as I said, can be split in 3 parts. Let's start with the part that tells the story from the perspective of Michael and Christine. And when I say it's from their perspective, they really go ham on it. Christine is this community hero. She has 3 sons. The oldest one has autism, and when he was younger, the doctors told her that he would never be able to speak, he would never be able to do normal tasks. It's like RFK Jr. talking about kids that were vaccinated.
Autism destroys families. More importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children. These are children who should not be suffering like this. These are kids who, many of them were fully functional and regressed because of some environmental exposure into autism when they're 2 years old. And these are kids who will never pay taxes. They'll never hold a job. They'll never play baseball. They'll never write a poem. They'll never go out on a date. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted.
They're never going to be anything. They're never going to be able to be independent people. They're just going to be a burden on you. That's basically what they told Christine. But she never gave up on her son. And as a result of her tailored approach to her son, he turned out to be a genius, a whiz, really, a miracle child that she paraded around for anyone to see to prove how great of a mother she was. And that's basically what she used as a foundation to present herself as this hero of the community, able to work with kids with special needs. She creates a sort of a daycare program for parents that are having trouble with their kids. And Michael is a coward. He's a little weasel who is very depressed because they were fostering this young girl, but then her biological mother came and took her away. And he's now depressed. He really wants a daughter. Now, it's kind of weird how much he wants a daughter. It's never really addressed why this weird obsession, but notable to say that in real life, they never fostered a girl. They were going to adopt a girl from Haiti, but then the whole process got halted because of the 2010 earthquake, I believe. So much of the details, even though they try to follow what actually happened in real life or try to portray the events as alleged by the people involved, there are a lot of significant differences in either the order of events or how significant they were. And the first 4 episodes, I think they take heavy inspiration from the interview that Michael Barnett gave in 2019, where he maintains that they adopted Natalia through a closed adoption from an adoption agency that actually contacted them because they were so known publicly as great with kids with special needs. They were pillars of the community, and there was this girl who was going to end up in a care home if someone didn't adopt her straight away. And because they were fresh off of this failed adoption case, they jumped at the opportunity, not realizing that with the little girl would come heavy medical expenses, including surgeries that she needed. This is because Natalia was born with a very rare form of dwarfism that affected her spine and her bones. So until she had all the surgeries that she needed, including to her feet, and I think to her hips and to her spine, she would basically be in a lot of pain. Now, straight away from the get-go, the casting was pretty terrible. The actress that plays Natalia in real life has dwarfism, but she is 27. And one of the biggest disservices that the series does, and I don't necessarily blame them for this because I think it would be very difficult to accurately cast someone in this role to portray Natalia. She was 7 at the time. She was very small. She looked very, very young, despite what Christine alleges she looked like. There's pictures, and you can tell that this was a very small child. The actress that plays her does not look as young. But even if we suspend our disbelief and take this actress as having the same appearance as Natalia had in real life, because they are telling the story from Christine and Michael's perspective, she is presented as this evil girl who hates Christine, misses no opportunity to villainize her, to antagonize her, going as far as whenever Christine voices her concerns or her suspicions or tries to chastise her in front of other people, she maliciously smirks at Christine, almost as if to say, "I got you, bitch. You're looking crazy." And in the same vein, Michael and Christine are just heralded as these heroes, as these warriors that will never give up on a child, no matter the difficulties or the challenges or the circumstances, all because of how genius their son is. Natalia's actions then start escalating. She starts hiding knives under her bed, and she lingers around her parents' bedroom at night, standing at the edge of their bed, holding a knife, saying, "It's not time yet," but voicing several times that she wants to kill them or kill everyone but the father. She conspires to have the sons get run over by cars by throwing their toys on the road. She leaves tacks on the floor for them to step on. And eventually, Christine sees that she has pubic hair down there, which in real life happened the first night they got her when she bathed her. And she also finds bloody socks hidden in the closet, and she assumes that's because Natalia has been hiding a period. She becomes fully convinced that Natalia is a grown-up. They take her to a lot of doctors to get her assessed, and the very few interactions that we see are very heavily dominated by Christine and her paranoia, her obsession to prove that Natalia isn't who she says she is. There was also this allegation that she was diagnosed as a sociopath, which we see in the series as a psychiatrist saying that if she was an adult, she could be considered a sociopath, but because she's a child, it could be considered something else. Because she is a heavily traumatized little girl. She was born in Ukraine, and then she was transferred to the United States as a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, and then she was adopted and then readopted. And it was a lot of changes to a girl that already has a form of dwarfism that the doctors say would make it more plausible that pubic hair would appear at such a young age. The series does a good job at planting seeds of doubt in the viewer. Pair that with the portrayal of Natalia as this evil person who smirks at Christine and is almost doing this on purpose to villainize her. And by the end of episode 4, they get this idea from a detective who gets called by the neighbors to re-age her. They show him the birth certificate with a picture that they claim looks nothing like Natalia, and he says that there was this previous case where they changed legally the age of a child to make them older. And that's what they do. They institutionalize Natalia in a psychiatric hospital. They get the court to change her birth year from 2003 to 1989. And as she's in the institution, they change her from the pediatric ward to the adult ward. And then when she gets out, they put her living by herself in an apartment complex. The breaking point for this was, of course, when Natalia allegedly pushed Christine against an electric fence, trying to kill her. Oh, not to mention that there was also the attempted poisoning by Natalia. Christine alleges that Natalia put bleach in her coffee. But that paired with Natalia pushing Christine against an electric fence, and that was the breaking point for the family. Now, of course, in real life, those have been debunked. Natalia said that, first of all, the bleach incident was completely fabricated by Christine, and the electric fence wasn't even a thing. She just tripped and fell on the floor and then started screaming hysterically that Natalia was trying to kill her. Natalia wasn't even big enough to reach her hips, let alone push her or drag her, like Michael said, with the strength of Arnold Schwarzenegger. So by the end of episode 4, they dump her into this apartment complex, and it's very clear that they followed the interview that Michael gave in 2019. But my question is, why not follow the interview that he gave in 2022? The interview where he completely changes his story and says that actually, Christine was incredibly physically abusive towards Natalia. She would force her to stand against a wall for 8 to 12 hours a day, not allowing her to go to the bathroom or eat. She would pee herself. She would soil her trousers. She would beat Natalia up with her fists, with her elbow, with a belt, trying to beat the truth out of her, forcing her to confess that she was older and name the people that she knew or was in cahoots with. And if you knew nothing about the real life story, by the end of these 4 episodes, you would probably be on Christine's side. Sure, there are some inconsistencies, and we see a couple of flash forwards of Christine getting arrested and a detective starting an investigation, but for all intents and purposes, it is very sympathetic towards Christine and Michael. And even though the narrative switches at episode 5 and starts telling the story from Natalia's perspective and then carries on with a more realistic, fact-based approach, it's never enough to erase the 4 long-ass episodes they dedicated to humanizing Christine, to showing her as the hero of the story, as a pillar of the community that was simply trying to do good, but was being tormented by this crazy psychopath in her house, trying to kill her kids and steal her husband. From episode 5 onwards, we see Natalia living by herself, first in this apartment complex and then getting taken to Lafayette, to a very dangerous area filled with crime. Definitely not a place for, at the time, a 9-year-old to live in. This was also around the time that Christine published a book. She definitely capitalized on her son Jacob and his genius to build a business, to sell this approach that she had with her son to other, I don't know, companies, schools, institutions, whatever. She was making a good amount of money off of her son. So having Natalia in her life, this problematic child that she just could not figure out, was a detriment to her image. And that's probably what contributed to her aging her daughter up. I'm just pissed off that we never see the first 4 episodes as told by what actually happened. And as Natalia is living by herself and struggling, she meets Cynthia Mann, who is married to Antoine. And this is an interesting couple as well, because though they did help Natalia and they did provide her with some semblance of a normal life and a family dynamic, they're not necessarily the heroes they presented themselves as, but I'm gonna leave that for later. For now, they helped Natalia, they took her in, probably because they needed money, and Natalia had money from the government, assistance, disability, etc. And for a few years after, until 2017, they tried to change the guardianship of Natalia from the Barnetts to themselves. Problem is, if they did that, they would be able to correct her age and then file charges for child neglect against the Barnetts. So Michael did every possible thing imaginable to stop them from changing the guardianship of Natalia, and eventually got the judge to ignore the copious amounts of evidence that Natalia was in fact a child when they got her age changed. And they decided not to appeal in 2017 because, unsurprisingly, they had been unsuccessful so far. So why would they want to continue this endless legal battle that seemed to want to criminalize Natalia till the ends of the earth? This is when a detective gets involved. He takes an interest in Natalia's case, particularly when he also has a kid, and he imagines, like, what if Natalia was my daughter? I would want her to get justice. Like, what the Barnetts did was extremely evil, so they should pay. And they start investigating. They start trying to build a case against the Barnetts, because here's the thing. Once they legally changed her age to being born in 1989, everything that happened to her, they couldn't be liable for it as a child abuse case, right? So the main goal in 2019 was to file 2 types of complaints, one for child neglect and one for neglect of a person with a disability. And they gathered so much evidence. They had witnesses, doctors, teachers, neighbors, everyone and anyone who had ever come into contact with Natalia, realizing that she was indeed a child, were willing to testify in her favor against the Barnetts. And it's the same thing that we spoke about in my previous video about the documentary, that no one seemed to want to help her until they realized that, shit, she was a child. Everyone kept saying, if I had known that she was just a kid, I would have gotten involved. I would have tried to help her. And then episodes 7 and 8 are the best ones, I think, because they are the ones that finally show what actually happened with facts. They don't try to sugarcoat it. They don't try to paint her as this villain, as this crazy murderer. Again, it's hard to buy into this when you have all of the images from the first 4 episodes that paint her as the villain, as a lying adult. And I don't know what the is wrong with courts and the judiciary system, or the judicial system, whichever takes charge of these things. I think that the judges and the lawyers involved in all of this should be publicly shamed for the rest of their lives. I think that the judges involved in all of these court proceedings, and especially the lawyers representing Michael and Christine, I really think they should be publicly shamed and should never be able to work. I know it's their job, and you've spoken about this, it's their job, but, like, we used to be a society, right? I guess this is a place of wanting to preserve the good in the world and wanting to see the justice as justice and not as whoever comes up with the best narrative wins. Because you see Michael and Christine and their lawyers trying to come up with a defense against the child neglect charges, looking at all the witness statements and then looking at the fact that all of the biological tests they've run on Natalia show that she was indeed a child. The lawyers know that these two dimwits abandoned a little girl in an area full of crime where she could have been killed at any point. Like, very easily could have been murdered, could have been trafficked, could have been beaten up. Like, so many horrendous things could have happened to her. And then they subpoena their Facebook messages and they read how heinous they were, how horrific the way they talked about Natalia was. They know, and they still have to defend them, and they still come up with these ways to block the prosecution. They actually get to the judge on the day of the proceedings, a day after her biological mother gave an interview saying, yes, I was coerced by the doctors to give her up for adoption. Michael's lawyer manages to get up to that judge and go, you know what, this is a circus, and I think they're trying to undermine a decision already upheld by the court trying to change her age. And I think it's insulting, really. It's insulting. And the judge is like, you know what? You're right. The courts have already decided that that little, visibly young girl was born in 1989, making her a full adult. She is 33, not 19. So moving forward, no one can talk about her as a child. Nothing can refer to her as having been a child, and if anyone wants to talk about her date of birth, they have to say that she was born in 1989. So all the witnesses they had, none of them can testify. The teacher who Christine claimed had said Natalia was ramming her walker into students can't testify because he was a teacher at a school and Natalia wasn't a child, so nullified. All the pediatric nurses and doctors that analyzed Natalia and came into contact with her can't say anything because they're pediatric doctors. The nurse at the psychiatric ward when Natalia was in the pediatric section can't talk because that's a pediatric nurse. So basically, all of the statements aren't valid. And all of the Facebook messages that show how heinous these two are, they were going to be used when Natalia was considered a child, because then you lose spousal privilege. But because she's now being seen as an adult, they can't even use the messages on Facebook because that is now spousal privilege. How f***ed up is the law? If you think about it, like what the and because of all of that, Michael is considered innocent and all of the charges against Christine are dropped. We knew how this was going to end, right? My issue is not with the last 2 episodes of the series, perhaps even the last 4 I'll excuse, but it's the first 4 episodes that really, really pissed me off beyond belief. Because everything they show us in the first episodes is never fully rectified. We then get small hints and suggestions that Christine was in fact abusive. We get like flashes of Michael saying, oh yeah, she hit her with her fists and her elbow. Or we see Natalia in the doctor's office have fleeting flashbacks of Christine chasing her up the stairs. But we never see the extent of the abuse. We never get told the true extent of how evil she was and how useless Michael was. They never talk about how apparently the 3 kids were encouraged to beat her up and to abuse her. We never get told about an incident where someone kicked her down the stairs. You know, she had a surgery to her feet that intended to increase how much she was able to walk because she was only able to walk about 10 feet. And after the surgery, they would hope that she could walk 50 feet. That's how extensive her pain was, and she was still being forced to stand all day. And instead of pulling from all of these facts that Michael has shared in a 2022 interview, no, they instead go back to the roots of when they were lying, conniving, and they actually invested half of the entire series. Half with lies, perpetuating this narrative that maybe she is a crazy psychopath. Go back to my previous video and go through the comments. There are still people saying that no, she did lie. There's still people saying that there's no way she was a child and that for sure she lied and she manipulated people. There's still people defending Michael and Christine, saying that there is definitely something wrong with Natalia. And of course, that's mainly prejudice because of the way that she looks, because of her appearance, which pisses me off even more. And the series, I guess, capitalized on that need for sensationalism that we have. You know, we want juicy stories. We want compelling stories, the kind of mystery thrillers. We don't know what's real and what's not and whatever. Do that with fictional stories. Don't do that with real people's lives. Don't do that with stories that have been proven beyond shadow of a doubt to be A, B, or C. Don't play out the lying fantasies of sociopathic grown-ups who used a child for clout and then dumped her when she didn't serve the purpose. There is an interesting parallel that they draw in the last episode when Jacob, the prodigy son, talks to his mom after the court hearing. He's now living with extreme amounts of remorse. And in real life, Jacob also looked like a broken human being. But he does tell his mom that Natalia's birth mom basically claimed that the doctors told her exactly what the doctors told Christine about Jacob. And Christine denies, saying it's not the same thing, but it is. You know, both mothers had a child that would have special needs, and the doctors were very quick to tell them that the kid would amount to nothing. The kid was basically going to be a burden. Again, it's like the doctors were RFK Jr. If they wanted to make this a compelling story of you don't know what happened, what didn't happen, and you want to show how far evil people can go and how much they can get away with, you could have made this with a fictional story. But that wouldn't have had the clout of news reports from a few years ago. Because before the court hearings, Michael and Christine went on a media tirade, a barrage of interviews and statements claiming that she was crazy, she was trying to kill their family, and that they were just acting in the best interest of their family. They were trying to protect their kids. The judge even had to issue a gag order for them to shut the up because they wouldn't stop talking to the media. This show had an opportunity to tell the truth from the beginning. They had an opportunity to show Natalia getting adopted and then Christine getting increasingly unhinged for no reason, villainizing her. And they didn't even have to show the abuse happening. They could have just implied it because, you know, no one deserved to see the abuse they suffered play out in real time. But if they really wanted to tell the story, they could have shown it from the perspective of Natalia from the get-go. Maybe you would have lost some of the compelling aspect of not knowing what was happening and who was telling the truth. But also, why the do you need that? This is a real person who's trying to move on with her life. Natalia recently in an interview said that she doesn't want to be known as the sociopathic adult that posed as a child to kill her family. She wants to move past that because that's not what she is. She also doesn't want to be known as the traumatized little girl who was abused by her parents and then villainized for the entire world to see and then had her adoptive parents get away with it. And yet here it is, another series perpetuating these lies. Half of the series portraying her as an evil person. And for what? What is Hulu gaining with this? Huh? Someone at Hulu, someone that authorized this, please tell us, what the are you gaining from this? Is it the clicks? Is it the views? Ellen Pompeo, if you ever see this, let's talk. What the girl? I know that you wanted to break free from the Grey's Anatomy role. That's what she said. She wanted something challenging. And listen, the performance was good. But what was the point? Like, she even said that she avoided researching the whole story and she tried to first get into Christine's mindset and understand her point of view. And I get that. As an actor, you have to get into your character's mind. But seriously? Like, what the girl? This is some heinous shit. This is some heinous shit. My only hope is that Michael and Christine's reputation is damaged beyond repair and they have to live out the rest of their life in hiding. I truly wish nothing but the absolute worst to both of you in the afterlife. As for Natalia, after living with the Mans for over a decade, there were some issues. There were some abuse allegations that came out. And this is when we get into Cynthia and Antoine Mans. They had a bunch of foster kids, like 7. That's a lot of kids. And there's several people that alleged that they were doing that just so they could get government money, you know, to to basically do nothing and have money. But also, Antoine is a pastor, and it gives cult. It's like he's running a cult in his own home, and all of his congregation is his kids, basically. I don't know how faithful this is to reality, considering the series has taken such creative freedom and liberty to change so many aspects of the story. But there was this little girl that they had, and apparently they kept trying to block her biological mother from getting into contact with her. And there's even a fleeting scene where she tells Natalia that she's writing a birthday card for her mom, but then she begs her not to tell Cynthia about it. And it's implied that Cynthia and Antoine are not exactly the saviors that they claim to be. I guess everyone in this fucking story has a savior complex. Christine was so obsessed with becoming the savior of children with disabilities, using her son as a walking billboard, proving her abilities as a mother and a caretaker. And then Cynthia and Antoine used their congregation, their church, as proof that they were just children of God helping God's children, or some heinous bullshit like that. It looked like a cult. They acted like a cult. They did this like prayer circle things, and they just like gathered energies from the universe to give it to Natalia. You can do it. It's fucking weird. It's weird. And season 3 of The Curious Case of Natalia Grace does something really, really crazy. They started going this like Real Housewives style of editing and storytelling. Y'all, it's really awkward and cringe. There's a few really awkward scenes. I'm gonna try and show you guys one of them.
Besides that, you're busy with school and everything. What is it keeping you away from home, really? Like, you know.
You've always been a great advocate for me and protected me, and I know you have a heart of gold and wanted to do the same for Natalia.
Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? It was very clear from season 1 that The Curious Case of Natalia Grace didn't just want to tell her story. They were also interested in stirring up the drama and making this like a compelling watch. Like, oh my god, what is going to happen? Who's telling the truth? Which is heinous. But they take it up a notch in season 3, and I feel like maybe they were running out of things to do or things to say, and they were just trying to stage these like dramatic conversations that truly felt flat, because these are not Real Housewives with media training. These are people trying to live a normal, simple life, albeit some of them may have seemed like they wanted some of the TV clout that other people get. Regardless of that, we meet the Pauls, who are a couple with dwarfism. They had been following Natalia's story for a while now. They wanted to adopt her in the past, but they couldn't. So the mom was like really eager to be Natalia's mother, to take care of her. She felt really bad for everything that she had to go through. Then they start talking. She starts talking with Natalia over texts, and Natalia's like, you need to come get me. You need to come save me. Because Cynthia and Antoine apparently were very controlling. They really did not want Natalia to have any autonomy whatsoever. Also, worth noting that the man's made a lot of money off of Natalia from her media appearances, her media interviews. Basically, when the story broke out, she started getting more and more media attention, and that included a lot of money. So I'm sure the mans wanted to keep her on a tight leash so they could keep capitalizing on that. So you go from the Barnetts, who tried to make her a pet project to show the world how great they are, and when they failed, they literally dumped her. And then you have the Mans, who take her in out of the goodness of their heart, who see here another opportunity, another cash cow, and that's what they did to her. To the point where she got a boyfriend, and then they were really angry, and it was just like a lot. It was a lot. And Natalia got the Pauls to drive to her in the middle of the night, and she snuck out of church and got into a van with them and just left. Which, by the time this happened, this was like last year, 2024. At this time, she was already 21. Oh yeah, she eventually got a passport as well with her actual real year of birth, 2003, thanks to the Pauls, I think. So it was possible to do it. It's just that no one had bothered to do it. And I won't bore you with the dramatic details that they tried to again turn into this like reality TV drama type But Natalia is now happily living with the Pauls, and she's trying to build her life from the ground up. And I think that Hulu should pay her for the making of Good American Family, but I know they won't. They probably won't. I hope they would. You know who they paid, though? They bought the rights to this story from Michael Barnett, the little weasel that saw his wife beat Natalia up and did nothing. The little weasel that saw Natalia get abused day after day after day. He's the one who sold the rights to the story to Hulu. I cannot even imagine how much he got paid for it, but the fact that he's the one who had the rights to the story, or some, I don't know how it works, but isn't that some heinous shit? That you can do all of this to a little girl and you get away with it, and you get paid for it to be turned into a massive TV series adaptation starring Helen Pompeo and Mark Duplass. Those are some pretty big hitters. Like, they are some good actors. Speaking of good actors, does any of you want to come over for a chat? Let's arrange a call. We can record it, and then I can post it. Then people could finally understand why the would two highly decorated actors be in this project. Why would Hulu approve it? Why would they greenlight this? I don't know. I don't think I've ever been as angry about a story as this. So many people continue to exploit her story. Why do we always have to lead with she's a deranged adult, but maybe she's not? After we've convinced you that she's evil and lied to everyone and was trying to kill her family, she was actually the orphan, the real life orphan. We're gonna actually tell you that no, she wasn't. She was just a kid. But we're gonna wait until you're fully fooled. Do better, maybe. And yeah, all I'll say is don't watch the series. I watched it, but I'm not being a hypocrite. Trust me, the way I watched it, they're not getting a cent out of me. Not to mention, how many people are going to watch 1 or 2 or 3 episodes of this and then just stop watching because they get bored or whatever, and then they're going to spend the rest of their lives thinking that Natalia is the villain here. Natalia is the adult, the grown-up, trying to kill her family. How many people? Like, it's not helping anyone! It's not! And that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this video, consider liking it and subscribe to my channel if you want. Also, comment down below. Did you watch Good American Family? Do you want to sue Hulu? I want to sue Hulu, and I have nothing to do with this story. I'm spiraling, y'all. I'm spiraling. I watched this, and I couldn't stop screaming at the screen. I think we need to be passionate about things nowadays, you know? There's not enough people being passionate about this kind of shit. Thank you so much for being on that side. Your support means the world, and until next time, stay safe, stay sane, stay stupid, and stay stuttering. Bye, guys.